And I'll go ahead and let everybody in. At all. All right, gang. Welcome, welcome. Everyone's pouring in now. We're right at the witching hour. We're gonna pause here just for a few seconds to let everyone come in, get relaxed, ready to go, grab a cup of water, all those sorts of good things. Welcome in, everybody. Thanks for being with us tonight. And just a few administrative notes here before we get started. So we're not in a webinar format tonight. We're in a meeting format. And really all that means is that you have the opportunity to interact with us in a couple different ways. One, you can put any questions that you have into the chat function. And if you're not super familiar with Google Meets, down on your toolbar, toward the right-hand side, I think it's the third icon over from the right, there's this little, looks like a dialog box. And you can certainly put in a question there to either Peter or myself as we go through tonight's program. We've got about 30 folks on the call tonight. So if you would like, you can certainly always unmute yourself and go old school and just ask a question live. Either one works. We're very happy to take any and all questions that you all have about essays, especially about A&M, UT, and Rice. Those are the three schools we're going to be focusing in on this evening. And then, of course, toward the end, we'll open up for questions on anything, whatever the subject matter is that may be top of mind for you. Okay, gang, so I'm former military officer. I like to get started on time, so we're going to go ahead and press forward. Again, welcome, everyone. My name is Mike Davila. I'm one of the two partners of College Inroads. I'm joined tonight by Peter Guzman, who is one of my good friends and colleagues. We've known each other for ages. Peter is a wealth of knowledge, and he is a former Rice, Grinnell, and WashU admissions officer, and also spent a long time at UT as an academic advisor. So he is no stranger to essays, no stranger to admissions at selective universities, no stranger to UT Austin. And I'm really grateful to have you here with us tonight, Peter. Thanks for being here.
Of course, I'm happy to do it. Hopefully I'll have some good advice to share with y'all.
Okay, awesome. Great news. Okay, so with that being said, we are recording tonight. So if you need to come back and review any of the materials that we talk about this evening, this will all show up either later this week. I know it's already Thursday, probably by next Monday. Let's just give me until Monday to upload this video into your files. So that you can come back in and review any of the topics that we cover at your leisure. So again, very glad that you are all here with us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and queue up the PowerPoint presentation and share that screen with you, and then we can get rocking and rolling here. And all right, so tonight I'm assuming that most of us are rising seniors. Congratulations for making it through the craziness of junior year. I know how that is. So congratulations for getting into the summer, and also I want to congratulate everyone on all the work that you've already done. I know that significant progress has already been made on your schools list and your resume, and clearly you've started writing essays if you've been with us for a little while. Now, if you just began with us, don't sweat it. We'll catch you right on up. So that's fine. And tonight, this is like the third, I think, of a webinar series that we've had on essays. So you can go back and review those other ones if you need to, or if you'd like to. Those are also in the file structure for you. All right. So, okay. So what we're going to do tonight, the first thing I'd like to highlight, and it is highlighted on your screen, is that the supplements that we're going to be talking about for A&M, UT, and Rice, they are last year's supplements. Gang, we are not going to know what this year's supplements are until they are released August 1st. So no one knows. This is top secret, secret compartmented information. The colleges don't release this stuff ahead of time unless they really mean to on their websites. Right now, we don't have any advance intel on what they are doing. So it's always really important, especially when we get into talking about A&M, to take a quick look at these schools' essays from last year, to get a bead on, hey, what are they looking for? What are they asking? They may change some, they may not change at all. Okay, so again, I'll reemphasize this toward the end, but we are looking at last year's essay prompts, which might change. These are supplements. If you're doing your Common App core essay prompt right now, which a lot of us are, those are not changing. So rest assured you're in good shape there. Okay, the second thing we're going to do is we're going to provide some tools and insight on how to approach these supplements. And really, I'll be honest with you, in the years that I've done essay review, essay brainstorming, anything to do with essays, to me, the questions that I end up asking students that I'm working with tend to be the things that are helpful. And you can do the same thing as you're writing, asking yourself thought questions. Hey, I can see what this prompt is asking, but going a little bit further, what else do I need to be addressing? So tonight, that's my hope, is to provide you guys some thought questions that might also help you unearth more gold nuggets that you can put into your essays that will help set you apart. The other thing I'm going to be doing is definitely encouraging you to continue with forward momentum in your essay process, because I know, hey, we have vacations. Hey, we have all sorts of things. Camp comes up during the summer. But I'll also tell you, we're entering this weird space-time continuum period of time where everything accelerates. It's the craziest thing. It happens every year right around this time. I promise you will blink and you will be at the holiday break. You will blink again and you will graduate. Okay, so it's going to be a really quick year. It's a great year, but it's a really fast one. So I really want to encourage you guys to get a lot of work done now. I promise you that will work out better for your stress level. Promise, promise, promise. Also, at the end, I'll provide a few extra lifelines if you need extra help. If you go through some of this material and you're like, okay, I'm still scratching my head here, we also have other things that we can do to bring to bear for you. Okay, so where are we now in the process of essay writing, essay review, all that kind of good stuff? And this is a slide I've used with my internal folks at College Inroads for brainstorming and essay review. So just to kind of pull the curtain back and show you where we're at, March and April and May, we started working on what I call initial supplements, which are, I would call the usual suspects, like, hey, why are you choosing the major that you're choosing? Or tell me a little bit about a community that you've had an impact on, or give me some reasons why you're choosing my college and why are you a good batch for us as well. So I know that I've seen tons and tons of those essays pouring into the system, which is phenomenal. In May, yeah, we had AP exams, the end of school, activities, all that stuff. So we kind of, the pot simmered down a little bit, but now we're in June, almost July. So it's now time to get cooking again on the core essays. And then also Texas A&M specifically, their supplements from last year. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Once we get past August 1st, as I kind of alluded to earlier, all the essay supplements for every school become live, and we get to see those on the Common App. Now, just a quick word of warning to you. In the College Inroads essay writing portal, it takes a minute for all of those hundreds or thousands of essays to percolate through and become updated. So post August 1st, for the first couple of weeks at least, the Common App or the Coalition app or the Cal app, whichever apps are you're working on, those become the arbiter, the ultimate authority on the essays. Okay, so just to let you know that ahead of time. Okay, a little bit more housekeeping. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking. I think everyone's done that already. Please ask questions. We really enjoy those. Please stay on top of your due dates and deadlines. Your consultant and essay reviewers have been assigning those to you, so stay on top of those so your stress level can stay low and your parents' stress level can stay low as well. And then also sign up for an application boot camp if you haven't done that already, because we're going to also help you prepare the I would say the scaffolding for your Common App right now before it's ever really opened. Okay, so enough on that kind of good stuff. The first college I want to focus on, I'm going to talk about Texas A&M here for just a few minutes. And A&M, UT, they're world-class institutions. They also act like it. Okay, so I want to highlight what that really means here in a minute. with the Texas A&M admissions process, there's a lot of what in the Navy I would have called bad gouge out there. There are a lot of people panicking over it, saying, we need to put in the A&M application at the witching hour on August 1st at 12:01. That is exactly false. People, that is not what has happened. Nothing is going to happen with that application at the stroke of midnight or thereafter. I had a chance last cycle to talk with an extremely high up administrator at Texas A&M, and you know what they told me? They said, and Mike, it is important to get your application in toward the beginning of the cycle. Yes, that is true, but we have a secret committee that basically handpicks records during the month of August to put them on the admissions conveyor belt. So what that means is that if you need extra time to write that essay during the month of August, take it. Make sure it's spot on and good. Do not try to cram in an application that's half done, or try to slam in a STAR, which used to be called the self-reported academic record for A&M and all that stuff to get it done. No, you have plenty of time. Now, A&M and UT, a lot of these schools are deadlining October 15th and November 1st. So you can see there's a lot of time after August to submit applications. But I would say if I'm applying to A&M, especially for business or for engineering, both of those programs last year closed before their November 1st deadline. So that means, yeah, I'm going to put that application in first. But again, it does not have to be at midnight on August 1st. Okay, so what is interesting about A&M also is they require as a supplement a long essay, which replaces the Common App's core essay. So they require a 650-word long supplemental essay that is essentially a holdover from the Apply Texas application. We're going to look at that in a minute. So if you are applying to A&M, my best advice to you is, hey, there's no reason to write two long Common App essays. Just write a long Texas A&M supplemental essay and use that for essay number 7 on the Common App, which is a catch-all. Okay. So there's also a required supplement if you're applying to the engineering program, computer science, things like that at Texas A&M. Okay, so it really closely aligns to the supplement that you've already written or in the process of writing about, hey, why are you choosing your major? Okay, so I just want you to be aware of that. They do have a special supplement for those. And yeah, their supplements don't overlap very much with the initial supplements that you've already written for college inroads, and that's the whole reason we're having tonight's meeting, because I want everyone to be able to start drafting A&M supplements from last year in the month of July. Okay, so here is the long quote-unquote supplement from last year. Again, it's 650 words, which that's about a page, maybe a page and a smidge. Okay, so the prompt is, tell us your story. What unique opportunities or challenges have you experienced throughout your high school career that have shaped you into who you are today? Okay, so there's a couple unique things here with this particular prompt I want to point out. The first are the words I've outlined or underlined, opportunities or challenges, high school career, and how have they shaped you? Okay, first and foremost, this is an arc of progression type of essay. It's not a montage. You're not going to be scatter plot around. You're most likely going to want fairly much in a kind of a time-driven format, talk about an arc of your life during a period of time. Okay, so there's some unique qualities of this I'm going to touch on in just a minute, but just know that you're going to be telling a story. You are going to be using the first person, which is odd. That is very strange for most of us who have been in high school English classes. You're using the third person mostly. That's not going to be this essay, okay, or any of your essays for that matter. All right, so first and foremost, have you had more challenges or opportunities in your life? To me, that's a primary question to ask. And the reason why I say that is that I've sat with students before who've said, yeah, I've had tons of opportunities. I'm pretty privileged. Okay, great. Let's see where those opportunities have led. I've also had students come in and say, well, yeah, I faced some challenges. Okay. And it turns out some of these challenges are relatively minor. Let's just put it that way. And I want everyone to kind of think about this and contextualize this a bit. A&M's going to get nearly 100,000 applications. Okay, there are going to be students out there who've lost parents, who are supporting the family with a job. Those are severe challenges. And if we've stubbed our toe kind of in kind of comparison to that, it may dilute our essay. So just really think deeply about, have I had more challenges or more opportunities in my life? My basic thought is probably we've had a lot of opportunities. So I want us to focus on the positive side of this. Okay. How did my chosen topic or my identity start before high school, or did it start before high school? For most of us, yeah, that's the case. But this prompt is really encouraging us to talk about during high school, not elementary school, not middle school, etc. But for a lot of us, we have to kind of start there, because a lot of our core identities, like for example, when I was in your shoes, I was a baseball player. I started that when I was like 6 or 5. So if I start this arc of progression, I may have to touch that super lightly in order to give my reader a full scope of the depth of my interest and, kind of commitment to that. At one point in my life, I think I had played more seasons of baseball than I had years of my life. So here's a point where I'm going to say, you can tweak it just a little bit so that you talk about those early events just very, very, very quickly. Okay. Don't spend your all your real estate on your essay talking about those super early events, because they really want to hear about your high school experience. Okay. So the other interesting thing here is I've had a lot of students in the past say, I've had a lot of challenges, but those also turned into opportunities. A lot of times that becomes really interesting for your reader to see how those sometimes start as a certain thing that's like, oh man, this is just not going to go well, or this is pushing me out of my comfort zone into something where you feel much more mature, much more confident, things like that. So be thinking about those challenges that may have actually turned into opportunities later. Also, hey, was there a turning point that changed your mindset, your goals, your values, the way you look at life? Think about those major turning points that may have occurred in your life. Those are really valuable for them to hear about. Also, hey, what is something that you used to believe or do when you were a freshman that is completely different now? Okay, that's an excellent thought exercise to think about as you start to approach this particular question. Another one is, hey, did you face a hardship that others didn't? How did you adjust? How did you cope? How did you get through? Because often, this is super common, but you hear people talking about grit, determination, overcoming hardships, getting around problems, creative thinking, that sort of thing, problem solving. Yeah, we're going to need that when we go to college. I promise, guys. College, in my mind, gang, is not 13th grade. It's a whole different animal that we haven't experienced yet. So developing some of that resilience is definitely important. And if you have some of that in your background, this is a great place to showcase that. Did you switch between cultures, roles, or other elements in your everyday life? I worked with a student last year that had come from Saudi Arabia. So wow, what a completely different culture, a different way of life that she was in. And then bam, she got plunked down, into the Texas culture, which is completely different in a lot of ways. How did she adjust? How did she overcome adversity? Those sorts of things were a lot of what she ended up talking about. Have you pursued a passion in a self-directed or unconventional way? Lots of you guys have done this. Back in our day, it was really tough to pursue things in a non-conventional way. But now, because of information flow the way it is, there's lots of resources for us to go out and do additional digging, research, passion projects, things like that. So many of us have done those. This is a great place to include those activities in this particular essay. I love this one. A lot of you guys have started off as a mentee, as a learner, and then ended up becoming a teacher or mentor for other students. A lot of times this is catered for this type of essay because you develop, you change your perspectives, you influence other people in a really profound way. You have to stay on top of whatever you're teaching and become an expert in it. There's lots of different changes that happen in us as we migrate from being a learner to a teacher of others. How did you respond when life didn't go your way? Wow, does this happen, right? This happens now, it's going to happen later in your life as well. So how do you respond to those inputs, those life on life terms, kinds of things that happen to us, it's really important for us to voice that. Talk about the emotions that go along with it. Talk about how you pick yourself up, how you respond to those outside influences, what changed within you to get beyond those challenges. Okay, some other ones. Who do I see myself as today? What is my primary identity? Those of you guys who've been with us for a minute, on the second page of your resume, which is something that you probably did many moons ago, there was an invitation to write down some of your character traits and your identities. This is a great place to go back and review that. Mainly because a lot of us have a primary identity and then secondary identities. So how did I get that? When did I get that? What helped that develop? What trials did I face along the way? There's some surprises that came along with that particular identity. For example, I was, as you heard, a baseball player, but I was also kind of a nerd. I did not hang out with the baseball crowd. So my identity, my primary identity, really had nothing to do with baseball. It had everything to do with being creative and interrelating with people who also shared that kind of outlook in life. How was I not a typical X, Y, and Z, or a typical cheerleader, or a typical football player, a typical student? Go back and think about how you've progressed and what have you learned about yourself. And all of these core type of essays, they all are asking about who are you, right? That's the question underneath the question. So it's super important for you to ask yourself, what have I learned about myself through my quote unquote travels, through this progression of time that I'm going to be talking about in this particular essay? What small stories could I share that really kind of underpin that, that back up or prove that those lessons were learned? All right, enough on that one. We're going to now shift gears to the first short supplement that A&M offers. This is a unique one because you don't often see this from other colleges. Tell us about the person who has most impacted your life and why. And like those initial supplements you've worked on, this one's only 250 words. We're talking half a page here, gang, half a page. That's it. So the subject of choice, who has been the biggest influence on you? I would say the majority of us would say mom or dad. Okay, fair. That's great. So if you choose mom and dad to speak on, not a problem. And in actuality, that's the person in life that probably has given us the most, of our character traits, of the instruction of, from us from a very young age, right? But this, a lot of times, if you're looking to differentiate yourself, I want to ask you some questions here on another slide, to see, is there someone else perhaps that you might want to pick, that also has had a profound impact on you? There is also a trap, I would say, a hidden trap in this particular question. This essay really, gang, is not about the person that you pick. It's about you. That makes a lot of sense, right? They're asking you these questions not to find out about your mom or dad. They're not going to college. You are, right? So if you spend a long, long time in this essay, like more than a paragraph, digging into your parents' background, their interests, their, contributions to community or whatever it is, it's less room for you to talk about how they impacted you and what did you do with those character traits that you developed from your folks, right? So flip it. Make sure this is about you at the end, okay? Bottom line. So other people you may want to consider, and I ask this for a lot of my students, hey, is there a grandparent, other family member, or a coach, or a teacher, or a sibling, or a friend, or a boss, or a community member, or a mentor that also had influenced you profoundly? And for a lot of us, that is the case. And that might spice up your essay a little bit to not necessarily just talk about mom or dad. Okay, supplement number 2, tell us about the person who has most impacted your life and why. There's some more questions that go along with that. Who challenged you to grow? Who made you accountable? Who made you look outside of yourself? Like I had a coach, baseball coach in college, who I really did not like this guy. He was just a really persnickety, really tough-minded person, and I didn't appreciate how he led. But you know what? He made me grow in so many ways. He made me very accountable for the time that I spent outside of, baseball to grow he was very interested in that. So he was a tough disciplinarian, and yeah, at a military academy, you would expect that, right? So think about the people who have really made you yourself, who have really influenced you and, kind of pushed you past your initial boundaries. What character traits did these people have? What messages did they send to you? Did they live by a certain set of morals, and what rubbed off on you? What examples can you prove to show their influence on you? Yeah, and how are you a better human now because of them? That's really what this essay is going to get to. And how has that relationship with that person changed through time? Have you gotten closer? Do you still maintain contact with this person even though they may have been at camp with you 3 years ago? That sort of thing. All right, number 3 for A&M, describe a life event which you feel has prepared you to be successful in college. Okay. Interesting question. This, again, is not a super common essay question for colleges to ask. So I want you to think really quickly and reverse engineer some traits of successful college students. Which ones apply to you? And I'm just going to throw some up out on the screen for you to consider. Okay, there's a lot more than this, but this will kind of wet your whistle. Okay, so college students that are successful typically have a really strong work ethic and have developed discipline, because let's face it, you're going to be in class 15 to 17 hours. You're in class like 35 to 40 hours right now. So you're going to lose a lot of this, structure that's going to be imposed on you. And those who have strong work ethics and discipline rise to the top. People who are curious, people who want to learn about a lot of different things tend to really excel in college, especially in the first couple of years, which really impact your grade point average. In your last couple of years, that influences perhaps research and things like that. Yeah, people who are dedicated to a cause and really focus in on a few things to put their time and effort into, and then have a lot to show for it, within themselves and externally. People like this go to college and they have to, deal with the curveballs, right? So adaptability becomes important. You're going to be working in teams in college a lot. So teamwork and communication skills, healthy independence, so mom and dad are not going to college. You living your life independent from mom and dad, a very important trait to have. People in college who are successful solve problems a lot, are honest, are coachable. They can finish a job. They synthesize data and ideas across different disciplines. They want to go deeper in a lot of the subjects that they love. Accepts failure as a part of growth. That's a growth mindset. Man, I did not have that as a high school student. I will tell you that. Wants to apply what they learn in real life situations, or to tackle problems. Comfortable with the discomfort of learning. Let's face it, you guys are in it right now. You see, it's like, wow, learning can be tough. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do. They challenge their own beliefs, things of that nature, and have a strong vision of what they want to do in the future. So again, this is partially an idyllic college student. So think about this. Describe a life event which you feel has prepared you to be successful in college. Okay, if these are some traits that are success driven, or help people become success driven in college, what do you show right now? Have you accepted some failures in your past and have moved on from them and learned from them? Do you enjoy solving problems and puzzles? Things like this, guys. All of you have some of these on the board already. Okay, so some thought questions here. This one, it says, hey, describe a life event, but a life event, it can be a moment of time, or it can be a season of life, so you don't have to think of it this super narrowly. This could be like an entire freshman year, for example. Yeah, when did I have to adapt quickly? Was there a project I really found interesting and immersed myself in a surprising way? Did I support somebody through an awful stretch of life? Or was there an instance which caused you to grow up or develop additional maturity? Those are all really important questions. So did you go through an experience that taught you that you could be much more independent than you previously thought? Or, I love this one. Talk about discussing a failure. Peter, I'd love to hear we're going to switch over to Peter here in a minute, but discussing a failure, I don't know about how you feel about this, Peter, but for me, when I start hearing students being very vulnerable and talking about times where they didn't hit the mark, I start thinking, hey, this person's authentically talking to me, and I kind of perk up a little bit. So how's that for you?
Well, I agree. Maybe it sounds a little cliche to say, we maybe learn more from failure than success. I'm sure somebody smarter than me said that many moons ago. But you do, I mean, failure, builds character. We hope.
Yeah.
But it also teaches you something about yourself. How did you respond to that failure, and whatever that failure might have been? I didn't make this team, or I was really, hoping to, win this award, or, and, again, that's up to you to define what it is that, you're going to characterize as, a failure, or maybe a setback is another way to talk about it. And just because you failed at something doesn't mean that you didn't come back at that same experience and were successful later. Maybe what you learned from your first go round, taught you, a better strategy for moving forward. And also, again, taught you something about yourself. So I do think that, this doesn't have to be, again, kind of a happy-go-lucky type of thing. It can be, hey, this was a challenging experience, academically, personally, whatever it was. But because of this is how I grew from that, or continue to grow from that experience. And this is why I think that that's going to help me to be successful in college. So yeah, I think, again, prepared to be successful, again, doesn't necessarily mean that, you have to, like I said, have to write about something happy, for want of
none of us are perfect, right? We don't go through life and get 100% on everything. And, no. And I agree with you, Peter. Most of the wisdom that I've gained in this life, the little bit I've accumulated, has come from the school of hard knocks, which are, where I got knocked down or I fell down.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, all good. I'm going to pass the baton over here to Peter, and we're going to be moving on now to UT.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, Mike, for getting us off on that role. And I do think, just to kind of reiterate what Mike had in one of his earlier slides, is that for those of you who have been working on some of your supplemental essays, at least the ones that College Inroads asks you to work on, those do look different from the A&M ones. Whether we're talking about college match or community or something of that nature, the A&M questions are a little bit different. And so I think it's a good thing that we're talking about this evening, so that you can start thinking ahead about how to craft, the best essay response to their specific questions. So moving on to the UT Austin supplemental questions. And Mike, I just wanted to mention that somebody might have a hand raised.
Yep.
So
it looks like Diego's got a hand raised. So go ahead, Diego.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting the flow of the
Oh,
meeting.
all good.
But for going back to the A&M supplemental questions, do you think it would be worth it to start drafting off of those prompts, or do you think?
I would personally, because even though they may change, I would like everyone to get a head start on the A&M application, because there is that stress of, hey, we want to put that application in sometime in August or maybe early September. And I know if you're like I am, I'm going to put in a draft into the review team. I'm going to get it back. I'm going to make the edits. I'm going to send it back. I'm going to get it back again. You have 4 different drafts of every essay, right? So rinsing and repeating takes a minute of time. Plus, you're going to be running up against the beginning of school in August. So yeah, if I'm in your shoes applying to A&M, I would highly encourage you to write these supplementals. Again, they're only half a page, and hopefully your educational consultants encouraged you already to draft the longer tell us your story essay as your Common App.
Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you.
Cool beans. You got it. Yeah. Any other questions while we're kind of paused here? This is great.
Yeah, and I agree. I think, my experience is that, 80 to 90% of the time, schools typically re-up with the same supplementals. Stanford, for example, has had the same supplemental questions and they've got a lot of them for many years. So I don't know that these are going to change that dramatically. So I would agree with you, Mike, that it probably makes sense to go ahead and yeah, just get that ball rolling, start writing on these prompts, and don't expect that they will really change dramatically or change much at all. So so with respect to the UT Austin supplementals, a couple of these look very much like ones that you may have already been working on, like why major and describe an activity. So with respect to the why major question, this is I kind of think of this as a two-parter. Number one, think about your resume. Again, as Mike mentioned, you may have worked on that many moons ago. But one of the first things you did in your resume was fill out that major career goal statement. And I think in many ways, I often tell students that this is something of a preview to this type of question. And that question is asking, what is it I'm interested in? How did I get interested in that? A class I took, a teacher I had, maybe a parent works in that particular profession, some other influence. What have I done to kind of cultivate or nurture that particular interest? I've taken these classes, I've had these out of, school experiences or whatnot. So I think as you begin this question, the why major question, obviously you're going to talk about what it is that you're interested in. And I think, how you landed on that particular thing. The part two of this question is, where you're going to be talking, I think, very specifically about how can UT help me to continue cultivating that interest? What is it I want to do in that major at UT specifically? So, obviously you want to avoid generic language like, the faculty are amazing and the research that goes on is tremendous, and the wonderful study abroad opportunities, and I'm going to be surrounded by like-minded peers who are equally invested in their education, and it's going to be a great place to go to school. Sounds wonderful, but that probably also sounds like every other school that's on your list. So this is where you may need to do a little bit of research about what specifically UT has to offer with respect to your major: business, engineering, comp sci, English, whatever it is that you're contemplating. And that's where I think it's helpful to cite maybe 2, 3 different specific examples. Really fascinated by the work that Professor John Smith does around quantum computing, or the opportunity that students in radio, television, film have to spend a semester in LA or New York working on film studies, or things of that nature. So do a little bit of quote unquote name dropping. Stroke their ego, if you will. This is why I think you guys, UT, are awesome. And really, that's kind of the thrust of this particular supplemental is, what is it about UT Austin in particular? It can also be its location, its setting. It's located, in this tech hub, if you're interested in those sorts of things, or, Austin or Texas as a whole has become, a big, film and music capital, or, again, you can kind of think about what is it about UT's programs, location, setting, whatever, that makes this a really good fit for me, and how I'm going to make the most of this opportunity or this experience. So I will say that if you are applying to one of the more competitive majors like business, like computer science, like most of the engineering disciplines, and maybe a handful of others, this is, you really want to lean into this particular question. It doesn't, you don't want to be, well, my primary interest is to be a business major and pursue management or marketing. But I think I would also enjoy doing economics, and I've always been interested in, whatever, music or something. All of that may be true. But you really, for those very competitive majors, you really kind of, like I said, need to be all in terms of, my passion to major in, to study this thing at UT Austin. So, so again, some of these things that I'd mentioned, think about, how your interests have, brought you to this particular point, how the different things that you've done, classes you've taken, experiences you've had, people you've learned from, and so on, have, allowed you to land on, this is what it is that I want to study. And
Peter, I got a quick question for you. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm fascinated with this one little tidbit that's kind of crossed my mind as you've been speaking. A lot of the public Ivies, the upper tier one, the Ivy League schools, at least in my mind, are kind of used to students who have what I would call vision, like an exceptional vision of what they want out of their life, even beyond college. I don't know about you, but I didn't think about what was going on next week when I was a senior in high school. So this is a tough one to think about, I think, for a lot of us. But would you agree that if you were the kind of person who said, look, I want to be a physician and I really want to do cutting edge research in this area because of these problems that I see cropping up in the world, this is kind of what I've done, like linking also your response for your major to your ultimate vision of what you want to do with your life later. What do you think of that? Or is that too heady?
Oh, no. I think I think that's great, because I think, again, if we think about what you wrote in your resume, again, how depending on how, fleshed out your response to that was, you may have said, I want to study this. I'm interested in, such and such major, and here's where I see myself going with that. I want to be a lawyer. I'm interested in the field of medicine. Public health is really important to me. My goal is to work on Wall Street, or, again, whatever it may be. So I think that, yes, I think you can kind of, it's okay to forecast into the future, so to speak. How is UT going to help prepare me to tackle those problems, or to achieve my goal of, again, going to graduate school, or, being a doctor, or, helping to solve these particular problems, or whatever it may be. So no, I think that I like your use of the word vision, because I think that, that is something that one of the supplementals that UT used to have was basically something to the effect of, how will being on the 40 acres help you to, what starts here changes the world.
Yeah.
So how is it that what you will do here will enable you to do that? So they did used to have a supplemental question, which I think in some ways, you can fold into this is basically, how will your UT experience empower or enable you to go and do those things? So yeah, I think you have a thought or a vision about that, and if you don't, that's fine too. You don't necessarily, we're not asking you to say, well, I've mapped out the next 80 years of my life and I know to the nth degree what that's going to look like, because I'm with you, Mike. I don't even know that I've planned on what's going on next week, but yeah, I think that if you want to put some of that in there, then I go for it. But to reiterate what you had also said earlier, which is, these supplementals, 250 words, that's going to go pretty quickly. So obviously that's part of what the essay editing process is there to help you with. Hey, this is running a little long. I'm not sure how to make this go further. How can you, the essay editor, help me, tweak this, or I need a better transition or whatnot. That's what those folks are for. They're there to help give you that guidance. So, when you're ready to write, be mindful, I think, of your, kind of the length of your narrative. You don't want to write a 500-word essay for something that's 250 words, but don't feel, in that initial pass at these supplementals that, it's got to be polished and perfect and right on point. That's what the lather, rinse, repeat process is for.
Exactly right. Thanks for that, Peter.
So the describe an activity. This is, again, something that you may have already started to work on, that college inroads essay that, basically, kind of looks very much like this particular prompt. And UT gives you some, examples. It can be an extracurricular, it can be a volunteer experience, it can be something that you do, within your own, family environment or unit. And so I was looking at this earlier, and something that I wanted to kind of translate was that word proud. When you hear that, which of these things am I most proud of? And that could be, well, I won this state championship, or I won the science fair. So I'm very proud of this particular accomplishment, and that's fine. But I also think you can think of this as what is something that has been most meaningful to me, or has really had a big impact on me. And that could be, I'm part of the PALS program at my high school, and maybe I'm also on a sports team, or maybe I'm, first chair in the band, or orchestra, or drum major, or whatever. But you know what? It really means a lot to me to be able to pair with this student, or to spend time with these folks, or to be engaged in this particular activity, because that fills my cup, so to speak. That's something that I'm also very proud of. So this doesn't have to be, when you talk about what are you most proud of, again, it doesn't have to be this overarching achievement. It certainly can be, but again, this is something, this is unique to you, and it's not something that it's meant to be, well, I got to come up with something that's going to sound better than the other 90,000 people who are in the applicant pool. So this is something that you want to, again, think about. What have I been involved in? What are the things that, where have I spent my time and my energy? And that may be, you can go back and look at your resume if you feel you need to jog your memory. You probably don't. But if you look at, okay, where have I invested a lot of energy, being a leader or a mentor, or, I've been playing, whatever, club soccer since I was in 3rd grade, and I've continued to do that as I've gone through high school, or I've been learning the piano since, day one, or whatever, again, so you can think about, again, whatever that activity is, and then whatever, school related, outside of school, could be in your church or your temple, or your broader community. It can be a citywide thing. But to also echo something that Mike had mentioned earlier in one of the A&M essays, is that specifically we were talking there about the tell us who's had an impact on you. Well, you're the focus of the essay, not that person. So when you are describing this activity, whatever it may be, set the stage. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you're talking about, but don't get lost in the details of that activity or that experience. Make sure that what you're writing about reflects upon you. What have I learned about myself from this? What have I contributed to other people? How have I, gained meaning from that experience? So yeah, again, obviously you want to talk about or introduce or set the stage for this experience, but make sure that the bulk of your only 250 words essay is spent talking about you, and again, what you've gained from that experience, and why you're proud of it, why it's meaningful, why it's had an impact.
Peter, before you head on to the next one, I have a question for you as well. For this particular essay, as you were talking, I was thinking about the times, like in my high school career, where one thing might lead to another. For example, my baseball team, we were undefeated for like 20 games, and then we lost big to our arch rival, and then the rest of the season cratered. Well, I wasn't proud of how we performed, but I was personally proud of how I continued to show up and had a positive attitude. So if I was going to write about that and then say, what, this trickled over into something else, into my academic life, or into something else that was also part of my life. I know that this is really limited in terms of word count, but what do you think about that when you see that in a resume? When someone says, yeah, here's the seeming focal point of my essay, but let me take you over into this other direction as well to show you how it's spilled out into other areas.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think that any of these essays, any essay for any college that you're, submitting them to, ultimately it's an opportunity for the person sitting at the desk, making those admissions decisions, to learn about who you are and what type of person you will be on our campus, in our classrooms, as a member of our community? What kind of person are we getting here? And I think, when you talk about the lessons I took from this experience have carried over into the other things that I've done. Well, that also tells us that, what you've done throughout your high school career, maybe more broadly, your life in general, how those experiences are going to, shape the type of person who's going to be a student on our campus. And again, how you engage community or how you tackle challenges, how you create relationships, whatever it may be. So I think it's fine. I think it's fine to take it in a direction that says, here's this thing, and what I've taken from that experience and how that has kind of, bled over into other aspects of my life. This has made me be more confident. I've learned to embrace the unknown, to take, greater, risks, or to push myself a little bit more, and so on and so forth. And I think, my suspicion is that your personality has changed and grown as you've gone through high school. The person that you were in ninth grade probably looks different from the person that you are today, because again, you've been shaped by a variety of different experiences, academic and personal and otherwise. And so again, you've learned lessons, not, and that carries you forward. So yeah, I think that that is absolutely a fair thing to do, to talk about, again, how this has prepared you for the next step without necessarily saying exactly that.
Right on. Okay, great. Thanks. And now on to Rice.
Well, and so, again, some of these are going to look pretty familiar. The major question: explain what you wish to study in the academic areas you selected. So, this doesn't necessarily have to be confined specifically to your major. It can be, I'm really interested in majoring in, engineering, but I'm also interested in, pursuing a second major in blank, or I also want to study such and such. So again, somewhat similar to what you might have done with the UT supplemental. The challenge here is that you've got a much shorter word count to work with. I think you can use whatever you wrote for UT or any other school that's asking you about major. I think you can use that as a starting point, but you're obviously going to have to write something that's a little bit more succinct. And you don't necessarily, as a part of this particular supplemental, have to talk about here's why I think Rice is the best fit for my major, et cetera, because the next question that you answer is why Rice. So I think in the major question, you can focus on, that major. I'm interested in blank because, again, this is how I landed on this interest, and you can certainly, make some allusion to why you think that studying at Rice would be, the best path forward for you. But you have that opportunity in that next supplemental, what elements of the Rice experience appeal to you. And that could be, again, it could be things of an academic nature, the quality of the research that goes on, the fact that it's a smaller university setting, but it has the resources of a larger institution because of where it's situated. It is, it's in one of the biggest cities in the country, and there's a lot of things that I can get out in the community and do, whether it's an internship experience or research. It's right across from the Texas Medical Center if I'm interested in health professions or public health or things of that nature, a whole range of things. So whereas the UT question was kind of here's what I'm interested in and why UT specifically can kind of fit the bill. I think you can approach these two questions. You can kind of split that between these two questions. Here's what I'm interested in majoring in, and why Rice? Why do I think that Rice is, again, a good fit for me? What is it about Rice that appeals to me? So that gives you, again, given that you're only working with 150 words for each of this, that gives you a little bit more room to move. You can kind of spend, this first supplemental focus more specifically on the major. You can spend the second supplemental talking more specifically again about the Rice experience, as it relates, like I said, to campus, to setting, to whatever it may be. So the next supplemental question, and Rice has basically 4 of them. So we talked about the first 2. So the third one is choose one of these 2. The first being, the residential college system is the heart of student life. What life experiences and or unique perspectives are you looking forward to sharing with your fellow owls in the residential college system? Then the other one is talking, this is kind of the community essay. Both of these in some ways are the community essay. This one is, the second one is taking it in a slightly different direction. So talking about this first one, the residential college system, it really is the heart of the Rice experience. Having worked at Rice, having been there, I had a very strong sense of that people identify perhaps more strongly with their residential colleges than people who are in their same graduating class, even across many different years, because there's a lot of traditions that are unique to each of the residential colleges. And the residential colleges it's not simply a dorm or where people go have a dining center. Nobody refers to the colleges, nobody would say I'm going back to the dorm. They would say I'm going back to Martell or Sid Rich or Lovett or whatever. So I think when I would read an application for a student applying to Rice, and if somebody said, well, I'm really excited to experience life in the dorms, that would be a little bit of a red flag for me, because I'd be like, well, that's not really, that's not how we refer to them. But more than just the nomenclature, I think it's also, again, this idea that, this is really a central part of the Rice experience. And, sometimes we refer to it as like, oh, it's like Hogwarts. You've got, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw and Slytherin and whatnot. Each of these individual colleges, like I said, they have their own traditions and things that are unique about them. There are faculty that live in each of these faculty fellows or masters are, in some ways kind of the parental unit, if you will, for the college. But they also, they're not there to govern or monitor student activities. They're there to be a resource. They're there to be kind of the living room of the residential college. And so as you think about that question, or either of these questions, again, I think it's important to do your research, to look at whether it's the Rice website, or to look at, sometimes colleges and universities will have a student life page, or they'll have like a student voices or a YouTube channel where students are kind of recording or talking about their experiences. Go and look at some of that stuff. Listen to some of those things, listen to what students are talking about or reflecting upon. And do some of that data mining, if you will, to inform, what your essay is going to look like. So, again, what life experiences or unique perspectives are you looking forward to sharing? Obviously, this is where, again, you have an opportunity to reflect upon what it is that you've done, what you've learned, where you're coming from, what you think you have to contribute, in whatever fashion, to your fellow students at Rice. So you can again think about your particular talents or things that you've or passions. I love to do music. I love theater. I am somebody who really I love to help others learn. Tutoring and volunteering has been very meaningful to me during my high school or my other experiences, and bringing others along or teaching them what I know is something that I really want to share with my future college friends and peers. So again, I think that there's a lot that you can kind of talk about when you respond to that particular question. But again, like I said, I think it's helpful to think about the nature of the residential college experience and how that kind of defines student life at Rice. So Mike, any thoughts before I move on to that?
All of those things that you said, Peter, ring true to me. I think that the piece of it that especially rings true is that all these schools have unique personalities. And so the more you dig into them and see, oh yeah, this is how it's referred, or looking at the FISC guide and understanding from a big picture perspective what Rice really is from a big picture, then you can dive in and look at the coursework and all those sorts of things and see how, oh, well, that would then necessarily, that would grow me in a certain academic sense, but here's how I want to grow socially, and this is where I feel like I could fit within one of these residents' experiences. So yeah, perfect.
Cool. And as far as the other one is concerned, so again, you only have to write one of these 500-word essays, and again, that gives you a little bit more room to be able to kind of flesh out your narrative. In the second one, you're also again reflecting on my own experiences, what it is that where I'm coming from, culturally or ethnically or geographically, or whatnot, and what is it that I think I can bring to Rice? What is it that I can, based on what I've experienced, how can I contribute to the Rice environment? This is back in the day, not that long ago, we might have referred to this as the diversity question. Diversity is not a dirty word. So despite what you might hear in the broader conversation, this is very much a meaningful component of student and college life, and especially in a very residential type of campus. People are coming from, again, different states, different cities, different backgrounds. They have different passions and goals. Some people are artists, musicians, really into theater, athletes, the whole nine yards. So you can reflect on any of those particular aspects of your identity, and it could be again, I come from a big family, or I come from a smaller family, or volunteerism and contributing is something that has been really important in my experience. My parents always made sure that we served others at Thanksgiving or Christmas to make sure that they had a holiday meal or something of that nature. Again, your experiences are your own, so you can think about how have I grown up, and again, what experiences have I had? It could have been I had a parent in the military, and so we've had to move around a lot, and I've had to make friend groups and then leave, and then kind of rebuild that experience. What is that taught me about how to, again, engage relationships, to approach other people, to build community. There's a lot of different ways that you could tackle this, and these are just some kind of 30,000-foot ideas. As each of you work with your educational consultant, you'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more one-on-one with them about things that may be particular to your experiences. So the box, I love the box. The box is this is a supplemental question that is probably never going to change. I worked at Rice a long time ago. We had the box. It's still a thing. This and the language that we have here is, directly from Rice's website. And I would take it at face value in terms of, it's when it says it's not used for evaluative purposes. Never in my experience did we make any type of decision on a student based on what they put in the box. And people put everything in there, a picture of their family, their grandmother's, recipe for banana nut bread, a prayer or biblical saying or a quote from, someone. It could be just about anything. And so, my words of advice on this are kind of what I put there at the bottom. It can be just about anything, and don't overthink it. This is not I have to come up with something brilliant. If you're somebody who just is total, I love math and physics and, whatever, then you could fill up your box with, mathematical equations or lines of code or something. Okay, cool. What does that tell us? It tells us this person's really interested in math or loves coding, or maybe it's, if you're a gamer, then maybe you'll, put a picture of yourself, playing a video game, or, again, it can be just about anything. The one thing that we used to get that this is no longer an issue because applications are electronic. People used to glue grains of rice in the shape of the word rice into their application, thinking that would be cute. The problem is that by the time your application gets to me and I get home and I open it up on my dining room table, the glue is hardened and dried, and I end up with a pile of rice grains on my dining room table, and it's a mess, and I'm not happy. So trust me, saw that plenty of times. Not a problem anymore. Obviously, whatever you put in, like it says, this has to be something that you'll upload. But put whatever is of interest to you. If you want to put the Willie, the rice owl, that's great. If you want to just put the rice seal, you want to do a picture of Lovett Hall, which is kind of like the main building on campus. Cool. Whatever. If you want to, I mentioned this to Mike the other day. If you want to put a picture of a football with you sitting all alone in the football stands with a little flag, because Rice is not a school that fills up its football stadium like UT or A&M or whatever. That would be kind of a funny tongue-in-cheek, that would make me chuckle as an admissions officer. I would think that was funny. I think that can leave, certainly a good impression. So there's not really any way you can go wrong with the box unless you just decide to put something that's not really appropriate.
Right on. I think that the main thing that people need to hear on this one, Peter, is that, hey, it's not going to affect your application one way or the other. It is literally like, hey, tell me something special about you that you really, couldn't express any other way. Boom, put the stamp on it and be done, and then leave it alone. So,
yep, absolutely. Yep. That's the takeaway.
Awesome. That's a takeaway. Awesome. All right. Well, Peter, thanks for those perspectives. Those are really helpful, especially from someone from the inside. So just as a quick wrap up, you have lots of tools and experience to write good essays. You've already lived a whole bunch of years of life. This is what the invitation is, to write about those stories. We can also help you because we've seen hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of essays at this point. If you're stuck and you need help writing, ask for help. You can write into the portal, and we can set up extra sessions with your educational consultant. We have writing coaches that can assist you. Especially the writing coaches are kind of a one-shot thing. So if you're writing your Common App core essay, you might want to reserve that one shot for that particular essay, because that's going to everyone for the most part. If you need to see examples, we didn't do examples this time because it would take a long time to get through them. from years past, ask. We've got a whole repository of them for really nice essays that students have written in past years. And it, again, great job in getting yourself to this point. I mean, how many of your buddies have written anything at this stage of the summer? Probably a lot of you have friends that have done nothing. So congratulations, you're here. Keep the forward momentum going, okay? Great job. And if there's any other questions here, I know we've gone over time a little bit. Are there any questions we can answer about the essay process, essay responses, or college admissions in general? All right, going once, going twice.
Yeah, we might have done a bang up job here.
I know. I think we, I think we lulled them into oblivion. Okay, we got a question here. Raised hand. Yes, go ahead, my friend.
Hi, you just said that if we want to see examples, we can ask them.
Yes.
What do I like? Do I just ask in the chat?
Yeah, you can just ask in the chat, and they can link you into the Google folder with some example essays. Correct?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
easy peasy.
Yeah,
Thank
and,
you.
and that would be the chat in your individual portal. So
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, perfect. Great question. Any others? All right, gang. Well, have a great evening. Good luck on the rest of your essay writing. If there's anything we can do to help, just let us know. Have a great night.
y'all
Thanks again,
take care.
Peter.
Thanks for being here.
Mhm.